Supporters and critics alike are continuing to reckon with the legacy of famed United States diplomat Henry Kissinger this morning. The former US Secretary of State died yesterday, aged 100, after a lengthy career that saw him become one of the most influential figures in US foreign policy. For more, our American in Oz, Sarah James, joins us now in the studio. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
He has a complex legacy, doesn't he?
Yes. Dr. Kissinger was a towering figure and a polarizing figure. He lived for a century and he shaped a century. He was a student of history, he taught history, he shaped history, and you cannot look at a map of the world and the strategic alliances and challenges and not see the fingerprints of Dr. Kissinger.
And he was a key figure in helping establish peace between Israel and Egypt in the Yom Kippur War in 1973. How is that legacy reflected in the current conflict that we're seeing in
you
Gaza?
certainly see what's happening in terms of, that was a surprise attack by Egypt and Syria against Israel, and it is something that's still being unpacked all these days, all these years later. But the reality is that it was a situation 50 years ago where that created stability and peace in the United States and also affected the calculus over how Palestine would be treated henceforth. So it is a legacy that affects everything to this day. He also had he was both appreciated by Israel and also at times not appreciated by Israel for the ways in which he worked with that country. And that was true in every one of the dealings that Dr. Kissinger had around the world. You can't really mention this topic without not only talking about the Mideast, but also Southeast Asia,
Cambodia.
Exactly, Cambodia. And then we really have to mention China. This is another one where 50 years on, it's impossible to remember the significance.
Yes.
There was 25 years when the United States and China didn't have diplomatic ties and didn't speak. 25 years. And suddenly there was a U.S. president there in China meeting with Premier Zhou Enlai. And from Mao Zedong to Xi, every single one of the Chinese leaders, Henry Kissinger met with them. Dr. Kissinger also advised all the U.S. presidents in one form or another. It might have been more casual,
right,
but the reality is he knew all the U.S. presidents going back to that time when he was Secretary of State, which is the equivalent, of course, of Foreign Minister for Nixon, and then through Ford, and then on. So the legacy of the Kissinger legacy is something that we're still talking about to this day.
Well, his legacy can be seen right now as the US has a really crucial role in diplomacy and sometimes intervention in foreign challenges all across the world, even now.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Basically, the policy that he had, it was almost this test. You either really liked it or didn't like it, but it was the same suite of skills that you were talking about. A projection of what Kissinger saw as peace through strength, and also a willingness to engage, and sometimes people would say interfere, and they were harshly critical of this, in areas around the globe in ways that were appreciated or not, depending on perspectives. So it's a legacy. The United States has changed a lot, and some of the things that happened at the time were not known at the time. Cambodia being an example of that, not being revealed until later. But and the policies of the United States alter over time. But that strategic way in which Kissinger engaged with the world is something that's still being discussed and was either applauded or criticized, depending on perspective.
And to the very end as well. He was just over in China as almost a centenarian, going over and meeting the president. And obviously that is during the time that we're seeing issues between China and the US.
Yeah, well, there are rising tensions in the Indo-Pacific, and there are rising tensions in the South China Sea. And this is an area where that is something that the hotspots in the world that you look at today in one form or another, where you're talking about Russia, which of course, when Kissinger was the Secretary of State, that was the Soviet Union. There is this entire arc of changing history that he had in some form or another, all the way from Nixon up to the present day. He was talking to the leaders and the people who were in charge, either first as Secretary of State, which he did for a couple of presidents, and then later with his agency where he continued to consult. So yes, I mean, a legacy that is enduring to this day and has affected the shape of the world.
Absolutely. Sarah James, thanks for coming in and
Thank you.
shining a light on a
Pleasure.
towering figure.